On this episode, an advocacy group promotes alternative transportation in British Columbia. We look at the history of sidewalks in North Vancouver. An apartment complex in Maryland neglects pedestrians. David Engwicht has a new book on traffic reduction. We find out how participatory design can help pedestrians. And finally, we talk with a pedestrian advocate in Vancouver. Stay tuned. We're in Vancouver, British Columbia, talking with Cheryl Macniak with BEST. What does BEST stand for?
BEST stands for, and it's a really long name, it's called Better Environmentally Sound Transportation. We're a nonprofit advocacy group that encourages and promotes alternative forms of transportation in the Lower Mainland.
What is alternative transportation? Alternative to what?
Basically, it's alternative to the single occupancy vehicle. So it could be walking, cycling, taking transit, carpooling, or van pooling. Basically anything other than driving by yourself.
How did BEST get started?
BEST started with a group of concerned cyclists who noted that there was a need for better cycling facilities in Vancouver. And we started in 1991 as a group of cyclists, and we have really expanded our organization to look at all issues around alternative transportation, including better transportation policy and land use planning, as well as keeping an emphasis on cycling and pedestrian environments.
So what are some of the programs you have ongoing at the moment?
One of our big programs that we focus on each year is called Bike Week. It's a yearly annual campaign where we promote cycling as a viable form of transportation. It's a great program where we draw attention to the ease and the fun of cycling, as well as the convenience of it in a city like Vancouver, where it's pretty dense, where you can get around quite quickly and easily by bicycle. And during that week, we also have a big event called the Commuter Challenge. It's a way to encourage workplaces to reduce the number of people who are driving alone to work by having a fun competition to see how many people they can get at their workplace taking an alternative. So we encourage cycling, walking, taking transit, carpooling, and van pooling on that day, and we hope that they'll continue throughout the year. So that's one of our big events. We also have a regional trip reduction program that we provide called Go Green Choices, where we go into large workplaces, we train employees to become Go Green coordinators, and they set up programs and put in facilities to make it easier at their workplace for people to take alternative transportation. We also produce a lot of educational materials, and we work in schools to set up programs as well to get teenagers into thinking about alternative transportation and get programs at their workplace, as well as facilities to make it easier for them to get there by other means other than driving.
And what's the neighborhood we're in now?
This neighborhood is called Commercial Drive. It's, as you can hear, a teeming neighborhood. It's an Italian neighborhood. It has a mixture of land uses, which I think is one of the reasons why it makes it one of the top 3 neighborhoods next to Kitsilano and the West End to live in. It makes it really easy not to have to own a car in this neighborhood when you can walk to get your groceries, you can walk to a cafe for coffee, you can get dry cleaning done here, and it's just a short walk away. And right next to us is a Britannia Community Center and a school, so all the services and amenities are really close by to make it really easy for people so they don't have to own a car. There's a lot of great pedestrian amenities in this neighborhood, like a lot of nice street furniture like the bench we're sitting on now. There's easy access to crossing the street with a lot of pedestrian activated lights. There's a good separation from the traffic with the tree-lined boulevards, and so it makes it a lot easier for people who are wanting to walk in this neighborhood as well as cycle.
And not every neighborhood in Vancouver is this friendly for pedestrians, with the mix in land use and so on. What can be done in some of the other neighborhoods to maybe not make them quite as nice as this one, but make them better than they are?
There's a lot that can be done. Citizens can get really active in lobbying their politicians for better better pedestrian and cycling friendly neighborhoods. They can advocate for example, traffic calming in their neighborhood, so it makes it safer for children to play outdoors and for pedestrians to walk on the street. In Vancouver, we have a great neighborhood greenway program where you can apply to the city to get a greenway put in your neighborhood. The neighborhood I live in, it's called Mount Pleasant. We applied for a neighborhood greenway, and we actually, the neighbors planted the greenway, and we're maintaining the greenway, and it's essentially reduced our traffic volumes greatly in our neighborhood, and it's made it a lot more pleasant to live in.
We're in North Vancouver talking with Dave Perfit. You have a street here with nice sidewalks. Is that typical of North Vancouver?
Yes, it's very typical. In the late 1920s, there's a very progressive outlook by the city to build many sidewalks all throughout the city out of concrete. They'd come off a period where a lot of the wooden boardwalks were rotting, and they wanted to have something that was more lasting, so there was a very well-established program to build them. I noticed that by walking around many of our numerous good sidewalks, and that's why I chose to live in this neighborhood, that many of the dates cast in these sidewalks were the late 20s. So I'm very thankful that we've had this great piece of infrastructure building that has occurred here. And now that it's 1999, we've had some of these now for 60 years. So I think it's been a good investment that the city has made.
How big an investment was it? How much money were they sinking into it?
Well, at the time, there's about 1 year I looked at it, and there was a capital budget for $100,000, and $25,000 of those were for building sidewalks.
So a fourth of the budget?
That's right, 1/4 of the budget.
Then, is the system complete?
No, it's not complete yet. There's still some areas where there's some strong desire lines that, due to the funding structure of requiring some of the frontage owners, the property owners, to pay for the sidewalk, that a lot of owners, unless they're resident in the house or for whatever the reasons are, not choosing to contribute or ask the city to build the sidewalks. So I believe there's a greater good that needs to be met, and it should be borne by the taxpayers at large, because not only do the people that live in those homes use the sidewalks, but other people use them to get to where they're going with the other sidewalk infrastructure that's already built.
We're in Bethesda, Maryland, next to the Bethesda Commons apartment complex. Apartments are right next door to a shopping center with food stores, a hardware store, drugstore, everything you need on a day-to-day basis. The residents of the apartments have taken advantage of that. There's a well-worn dirt path here at the corner of the complex where they cut through to get to the stores and shops. Recently, the apartment's got new management. I think the management would take a look at the needs of their residents and notice the well-worn path and improve it, pave it, so that you could get to the stores in every kind of weather condition. That's not what they did. Instead, they put in a fence. You can no longer follow the shortest route here. Instead, you have to hike down the driveway and dodge all the cars turning in and out of the complex. If the management were really concerned with what their residents needed, they would have observed where people have to go to walk to nearby destinations. They would have left a gap in the fence here and improved this path. We don't know where the management just didn't pay attention and wasn't aware of their residents' needs, or they noticed the path but they didn't care. We think they could have done a lot better for pedestrians. We're talking with David Engwicht from Australia, who's just finishing work on his latest book. What's it called?
It's called Street Reclaiming, Creating Livable Streets and Vibrant Communities.
What is street reclaiming?
Okay, street reclaiming is taking back some of the traditional roles of streets. For thousands of years, streets were used for purposes other than just moving people around. They were used as the epicenter of community and cultural life, used for children's play. They were the economic lifeblood of cities. So it's reclaiming some of those traditional roles of the street.
How do you do that? What's the first step?
Okay, the first step is to actually reduce the amount of traffic on the roads. The book basically has three new concepts in it. The first is the concept of traffic reduction. Up until now, we've assumed that all of the traffic on the roads needs to be there, just as city councils for the past few decades assumed that all the rubbish, all the waste in waste cans. Sorry, in Australia we call it rubbish. Well, just as city authorities assumed that all of the waste in waste bins needed to be there, and that you had to find bigger and better landfill sites. And then suddenly we discovered that by using resource management techniques, you could actually reduce that by, say, around at least 50%. My research indicates that by using what I call the 5 R's of traffic reduction, you can actually reduce the amount of traffic on the roads by about 50% without anybody forgoing a single thing. So that's the first concept. If you reduce traffic by 50%, you've got 50% of your road space that you don't need anymore, 50% of car parking spaces you don't need anymore. So that space can be reused for neighbourhood facilities, basically. And as radical as putting in a corner store or play equipment or a barbecue area or whatever the street desires, basically.
So what are the 5 R's?
Okay, the 5 R's, the first 3 of the 5 R's are ones that households can implement immediately. And the first of those is to replace some of your trips with walking, cycling or public transport. And that's especially the short trips. And what the book encourages people to think about is that many Canadians and North Americans are really unfit because they're not getting enough exercise. So this is a way, replacing some of your trips is a way of actually paying yourself to get some exercise. The second of the 5 R's is to remove some of the unnecessary trips. And you can do that by what they call trip chaining, which is saving up your unessential trips, joining them together, telecommuting, using the phone. There are a whole range of techniques that you can use to remove some of the unnecessary trips. The third is to reduce trip lengths, and you can do that by shopping locally, using home deliveries, a whole range of ways that you can actually reduce trip lengths. The last 2 of the 5 R's are really strategies that whole streets, whole neighbourhoods, whole cities can use in working together. And the first of those is to reuse the space that's been saved through the first of the 5 R's. Because what that actually does is if you reclaim your street and you say put a corner store on the street or you provide play equipment in the street for the kids, you actually cut down the number of trips that you have to make. You're bringing the facilities closer. So it becomes a virtuous cycle that using the households using the first of the 3 5 R's allow you to reclaim some of the space and reuse it and bring the destinations closer. Perhaps the most promising is the last of the 5 R's, which is reciprocating for mutual benefit. We've lost sight of the fact that a city is really a cooperative enterprise, and that the most promising ways of actually reducing the amount of travel we need to do is by cooperating with other people. A classic example of that is the walking school bus. Some schools have already dramatically cut the amount of traffic arriving at their school using the walking school bus. The car sharing club, which is there's one in Vancouver, but they're very big in Europe. People who join car sharing clubs are finding that they're reducing their car use by about 50%. These are all cooperative schemes that you can get into where everybody benefits and you end up with a net reduction in the amount of car use that you're using.
So, then your last couple of items required communities to organize and get together
And work together, yep.
Yeah. How important is this to creating a sense of community or creating a sense of community to travel reduction working?
Okay. With the book, for the last 4 years, I've been working on a product called the Traffic Reduction Kit. It's a kit that neighbourhoods can use to reduce the amount of traffic in their neighbourhood. And one of the things that people always say about that when they've used it is that what they appreciate most is the sense of community. And really building a sense of community is the ultimate answer to our transport problems. Because we've got to get back to the notion, as I said earlier, that cities are really a cooperative enterprise. We come to the city on the understanding that we are going to work with other people to share a piece of space in which everybody's going to benefit more than if they were living on their own somewhere. And that was the whole idea of public transport. Public transport was the publicly provided means of this collective enterprise of the city. Now, what we've done is allow people to move in a privacy sphere through public space. We've destroyed the private car basically destroys the whole notion of what a city is really all about. So unless we get back to cooperative ways of handling these things, it just doesn't work. It's anti-city, and it just doesn't. It means that cities aren't working. So yeah, it is absolutely key to it, and that brings me to the second concept in the book, which is the traffic reduction treaty. What I observed was that every street, every neighbourhood in a city that I go to, all want less traffic and slower traffic in their street. You know, I've travelled the world. I've never met anybody campaigning for more or faster traffic. Yeah. Everybody wants less traffic, and they want the traffic to go slower in their neighbourhood. So I thought the solution seems really self-evident. It's quite simple. Why don't we do treaties or sign a treaty between neighbourhoods that basically says, hey, we'll put less traffic in your neighbourhood, we'll act as a guest while we're driving through your neighbourhood if you do the same for us. Then everybody would have their traffic problem solved. So one of the ideas in the book is this idea of streets exchanging this traffic reduction treaty, and part of the treaty that they sign is that they're both going to go out and get other streets to sign the treaty. So it's like the Amway system of solving traffic problems, in that it will just spread like wildfire through the whole city. And one of the great rewards that those treaty streets get is that they then get to reclaim the space that they save in their street. So they get their street back. But they've got to reduce their own car use first. So you've got to look at this in the kind of the city-wide context, that a lot of the traditional methods of trying to solve our traffic problems, like traffic calming, simply push the traffic around and blame other people for the traffic problem. We've got to come up with ways where we accept responsibility for our part in the problem. So, for example, the people who live in streets that are complaining about the amount of traffic, they never think that when they're driving, they're causing exactly the same problems to other people in other streets as other people are causing them. So the solution is that you've got to get those parties together and say, let's work together and solve this problem so that we both benefit out of it.
We're in Seattle talking with David Levenshire. What is participatory design?
Participatory design is a way to develop technology to better serve human needs. Participatory design was a method developed in Scandinavia to develop computer systems that would fit in the workplace and serve the goals of workers, the quality of work life in the 1970s. And it's also something that's been developed for improving the quality of architecture. Architects in the Netherlands, Berkeley, California, are notable for projects they've undertaken to involve the people in institutional dwellings, for example, college dormitories or homeless shelters and low-income housing projects, to develop housing that represents a vision for the community, embodies values, and is sensitive to issues of use that are oftentimes absent when large-scale developers are trying to just turn out square footage.
Now, how would the methods differ for a computer versus a dormitory?
Right. Well, the dormitory projects are interesting because they involve a few different groups of people. So the dormitory projects would be commissioned by a university, for example, let's say University of Oregon in Eugene, and then they would contract with an architecture firm or an architect, and that person would facilitate interactions among students and administrators to develop that technology. It's a publicly owned space, and it's commissioned in that way. It's fairly set in stone what it's going to be used for, and there's not a lot of uncertainty that way. For computer systems, it's a little different. Computer systems development oftentimes happens in a private enterprise inside a company such as Xerox PARC, Xerox, not Xerox PARC. Xerox PARC is where they do this type of design, or digital, or they might be developed in a private company for a client like the U.S. government. But the purpose in the computer systems development is to develop a good product that's usable for a broader user audience, oftentimes. So there are tensions in architecture. There's a set audience. You know who is going to be using your architecture much more clearly. For a computer system, you have some idea of who's going to be using your computer system, but you're also hoping that a lot greater number of people are going to use it. So in computer systems development, they select a few users who will represent other users who can be pulled away from their daily jobs to show computer systems developers how their products can be used. Now, another interesting difference between architecture and computer systems are that computer systems developers, the programmers, sometimes seem less aware of the people than architects are. Architects get a broader humanistic education than do computer systems developers. So this is another interesting tension.
And when you get to the pedestrian environment, how can these methods be applied to pedestrians?
Well, that's a great application area for participatory design. And there are a few reasons why the pedestrian environment is actually one of the best possible worlds for participatory design. First of all, it's a public space. Even more than in architecture, and especially more than in computer systems, pedestrian infrastructure is constructed on land that is publicly owned, and people have a political right to participate in decisions about public spaces. So there's a mandate for democratic participation in this environment. Further, it's a fairly simple technology, so that the users may know more than the engineers or planners about what's needed in a given area or how to get there. Their creative ideas are very highly valued. Further, there are public employees who are doing this, who are responsible for this, at least, even if they're not doing it right. So planners and engineers are hired by the government and are in some ways answerable to the user. And finally, when you complete the project, the infrastructure is there for a long time to appreciate, to symbolize this wonderfully participatory process, and to make all the participants proud of having been involved. In some other technologies, especially for computer systems, they're quite rapidly outdated. And in architecture, buildings sometimes lose their shine, especially with contemporary architecture.
We're in Vancouver talking with Bev Ballantyne. We're at the corner of Broadway and McDonald. What are some of the problems at this intersection?
Well, as you can see, there's a lot of traffic here. When we look at these corners that have well-intentioned wheelchair ramps, the problem with those is there's absolutely no difference between the roadway and the sidewalk. So drivers have many times, and I've been involved when they have, simply drive over the sidewalk. So there you are, left standing on a sidewalk with a car beside you.
So that's a problem with the design where they have the whole corner sunk is there's no distinction between the street and the sidewalk.
That's true. Not to mention, it's continuous roadway. The corners should be squared, in fact, in order for the car to stop completely, whereas cars here don't have to stop completely. They just continue to go around. They barely need to slow down. So it's very difficult for pedestrians who may, in fact, have the walk sign, but you've already got a car that's blocking the crosswalk, so there's no place for them to go except to go into the traffic. The other issues at this corner are driveways, extremely wide driveways. We have Safeway kitty corner from here, and there are 4 driveways at Safeway. And of course, the people who are driving in and out of Safeway simply don't consider that they are crossing a sidewalk. And again, they are so wide that they're just considered roadway. We are at a gas station on this side, and we have the same issue here. It's basically all driveway. It's not sidewalk. It's a very insecure and unpleasant feeling for pedestrians. Again, behind us, in front of the bank, the engineering department was doing construction there a few months ago. The sidewalk was completely closed. There was absolutely no provision made for pedestrians. The pedestrians could just walk with the traffic, and you can see how quickly the traffic is speeding. Infrastructure is an enormous problem in this city, and this is a prime example.
What are some of the problems pedestrians face besides infrastructure?
Well, we have an enforcement problem. There simply isn't enforcement. The police do not take traffic violations seriously. There could be a police officer sitting in his car right at this crosswalk, and someone could drive through, a pedestrian, and he would claim he didn't see anything. Last year, pedestrian fatalities doubled from the year before. The police spokesman said, and I quote, "Deaths are up because pedestrians are careless." There was absolutely no responsibility given to car drivers. The sanction against those people who drive badly is extremely low. If I'm feeling threatened by a car that's driving through a crosswalk trying to hit me, and I hit the car with my umbrella and scratch it, I could easily be liable for a $1,500 panel replacement. The driver, on the other hand, would have to be found to be at fault, and that's very often tricky because they're always given the benefit of the doubt. And if he was fined, or she, it's probably a $100 fine, and that's the maximum. So there's simply, the sanctions aren't great, and the incentives aren't great for drivers to change their behavior. The other issue is attitude. The attitude of drivers, simply put, is that they're more important than pedestrians are.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.